In this interview, Dr. Pauline Sameshima and Patricia Maarhuis discuss research conducted as part of the Women in Meth project, which uses Ekphrasic methods within the Parallaxic Praxis model. The Women in Meth project is a research study at Washington State University and is funded by the American Nurses Foundation. It is a cross-disciplinary project blending nursing science and various humanities disciplines in the interpretation of the life stories of methamphetamine addicts in recovery. The Parallaxic Praxis model has three organizational components which recursively spiral and reoccur in the same order. The three components are data, analysis, and renderings. In the data section, researchers collect data in traditional and non-traditional ways. In the Meth project, our data consists of traditional hermeneutic interview transcripts. Researchers from different fields then interpret the original transcripts through their disciplinary lenses or through different mediums, whether they be video, music, poetry, visual art, or so forth. During and through the interpretive analysis, the researcher is informed through their creative processes of new ways to think about the original data. These renderings, the completed artifacts created through the analysis section, are then used as touchstones for the interdisciplinary team to discuss their thinkings. It is in the nexus of the dialogic spaces in and between the researcher's interpretations that new meanings evolve. The analysis is thus a method of fractaling the boundaries of the original data collection. The renderings may also be used as a way to metaphorically view the data, thus opening up larger semantic fields for discussion among broader audiences. These renderings aim to provoke further rhizomatic understandings and to generate the emergence of more questions. As researchers using Ekphrasic methods within the Parallaxic Praxis model, what is it we are creating? In essence, the interpretive artifacts act as metaphors that create new semiotic fields. This opens a liminal language space with new vocabulary, which, in turn, increases understanding and access to the data by other researchers, the project participants, and various lay and academic audiences. And this is an open research process that continues on as new questions, knowledge, and thinking are generated. It sounds like from what you're describing in terms of creation and you're shifting into a whole other language. So it's the creation of metaphors, and that this creates this liminal, expansive space for understanding and learning. Is that sort of that initial kernel, that initial process that the researcher artist starts with?
I think the intention is to, well, for me, the intention is to make a point about something. And as I read through, for example, the Meth transcripts, I'm really moved to speak her story or to share her story, because her story, I think, is often misinterpreted, or people have assumptions about that everybody's stories, the story of the addict, on the sidewalk shooting up, or something like that. The stereotypical story. While the experiences that we've read through the transcripts they're really close to the kinds of lives that we lead, and that it's just a wrong step here and a wrong step there, a small step which spirals out into something that is completely life-changing. And I think that in working with an artifact, for example, this ceramic sculpture of response to Gilda's transcripts. She talked about worms and her life, sort of like a can of worms out of control, and this piece is sort of the worms out of control with these sort of stops where she's trying to patch things. And in that patching, she creates this really complex system of control and
trying to hold it all together.
yes, and yet it is really fragile and vulnerable at the same time. This piece then is a metaphor for her transcripts. And in creating a metaphor, you are then creating a new semiotic field or a grouping of language and words that you can now talk about the transcripts in a new way, because now you're speaking with new language. So what if we created lots of different fields of vocabulary to speak about the original data, and we broaden it laterally, for example.
Which would be intertextuality. So bringing in music, bringing in sculpture, bringing in photography, maybe some poetry, and that creating this field.
As well, that new semiotic field, that new vocabulary, has interrelatedness in and among the different artifacts, as seen here in Pauline Sameshima's interpretations of Gilda's transcript from the Women and Meth Project.
And then, as you were talking about creating the depth, do you want to speak about the depth?
From what you were describing, it sounds like it creates palimpsest, which is the original document, the interpretation of the participant, the narrative. On top of that, there's a series of overlays that create real depth of meaning, but you still see the original interpretation from, say, Gilda or another participant coming through in each of the interpretations. So in that way, we would have the breadth in terms of the comparing different type of texts and narratives, and we would have the depth through the palimpsest.
The artifacts are like metaphors for the data, and when you create a new metaphor, you are creating a new field. You have your data, you create a metaphor for it, and then thus you are opening the language space for more people to think about that original data, because now you're working